I am Bill White. I am one of the co-pastors here at City Church Long Beach.
Are you on that side? Because you're weirding me out.
I know. I need
He
to go on
always
this side.
takes this side. I don't care, but he does.
This is Brenda Rubio.
Hi.
Appreciate you, Brenda Rubio. And we are in a sermon series right now talking about friendship. We're in the book of 2 Timothy, which is a tiny little book in the New Testament, just a couple of pages long, where an older friend is writing to a younger friend. And there's a lot in there about relationships and how to be friends. And so we're looking at that. And so today we are thinking a little bit how sometimes people don't stand beside us in the moment of our need, and that there are other folks who do. And in particular, we're thinking about chosen family. Chosen family being those folks who just sort of adopt you into their lives and demonstrate that kind of loyalty and faithfulness and care that we all need. Because probably all of you have experienced this to some degree, where a family member or a friend has not shown up, right? It's the hour of your need, and things are hard. And instead of coming through, they step away. And you feel it, right? It cuts deep. And we're looking at a situation where the Apostle Paul, he's early church leader, he's writing to Timothy about a situation just like that. But we're not really focusing on the heartache. It's very appropriate to do so. And grieving really matters. We'd rather think today about the resilience and the joy and the gift of having a chosen family. This week, I had a chance to see it on full display. We had another real crisis in my family. As many of you know, my mom passed in December, and on her birthday, May 24th, my nephew, who's 24, same age as my son, he went to bed at night, and he did not wake up the next morning. He had no pre-existing health conditions. Just super, super sad. So I flew back to Virginia this week, did my second funeral in 5 months. And just heartbreaking. It was messy. And it's still, honestly, kind of messy. In the process, I got to witness family at a higher level. My older brother was his son. He and his ex-wife just showed up so strong. And my brother's got this incredible community in the Alcoholics Anonymous world that, they're chosen family. They, just have come through for him. Like the morning that my brother found out, his sponsor left work, drove straight to my brother's house, picked him up. My brother says he doesn't even remember where they drove. He spent the whole day. My sister-in-law, Mia, has become sort of the mother of this whole friend group of my nephew, Luke. And so, it's just incredible to see. I visited the house, and just dozens of kids are just coming through the house. And there was this moment that really, really stood out to me. There were many, but one was at the big service, which was super well done, so thoughtful. One of Luke's friends got up, this 24-year-old young man, and he starts off, and this is what he says. He says, and maybe some of you can relate to this. He said, I was raised in church. He starts with this. Hi, my name's Charlie. I was raised in church. I went to church 7 days a week, and I was never good enough. And they always let me know that I was not fully accepted, that I wasn't godly enough, I didn't pray enough, I wasn't the right person, and that I just always felt like a disappointment. And then I met Luke, And Luke loves really well. And there were 800 people at this service. I mean, you could just feel the love. Luke was just such a lover. He said, I met Luke, and Luke's mom, Mia, welcomed me into her home. And after all the shame and hatred that I experienced growing up in the church, I found something different in this home. And Mama Mia, she became like a mother to me and to all my friends. And then he said, this is at the funeral, he says this. He says, and some of you might be thinking right now that that's the kind of church that I'm a part of. And I want you to ask yourselves, is that really the kind of God you want to serve? You need to leave your God and find Mama Mia's God, because he's a lot better. I mean, you could hear a pin drop. That here's this guy standing up saying, look, this is actually what it's about. It's about love and support and care. And those kids were powerful. I mean, we wept and wept and are still weeping. But it's the beauty. You can see family, biological family shows up sometimes, right? And then there's chosen family. The family that says, I choose you. Come in, you're mine. I'm there for you. So we're going to look at that today. We're going to unpack that a little bit as we hear the scripture today. If you would welcome Isabel Arechiga, who's going to read scripture for us.
Woo!
And if you're able and if you'd like to stand in honor of the reading of God's word. Isabel's got some names to read for us today. Just go with confidence.
Yeah, you better get those names right.
Nobody knows if you're doing it right. I don't know if you're doing it right. Just go for it.
All right, sounds good. All right, you know that everyone in the province of Asia has deserted me, including Phygellus and Hermogenes. May the Lord show mercy on the household of Onesiphorus, because he often refreshed me and was not ashamed of my chains. On the contrary, when he was in Rome, he searched hard for me until he found me. May the Lord grant that he will find mercy from the Lord on that day. You know very well in how many ways he helped me in Ephesus.
People of God, this is the word of God. You may be seated. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Isabel. So it's so interesting because this little passage does start with grief. And it starts with grief because relationships matter. Relationships really matter. You know, there are all sorts of studies out there, right, about those things that will help us not only live longer, but live really good lives, like the healthiest lives that we possibly can. And of course, those sorts of studies focus on all sorts of things like, okay, water and food and sleep. Of course we need that, right? We're basic organisms like everything else. But then all those studies also talk about relationships. Like relationships are actually as core, as key, as just fundamental to who we are and to our flourishing as people, as food, as water, as sleep. We need relationships. And, the Apostle Paul is a little bit of a complicated figure. Some of you know this, some of you feel this. I think we're going to talk about that even a little bit more next week when you have two women preaching. He's a little controversial at times. But this morning, I would actually like to start by pointing out the ways that the Apostle Paul, like many of us here this morning, often did not fit. He didn't fit. He did not fit the culture that he was part of. Relationships, community may have been really complicated for Paul, and not only because he was kind of a know-it-all sometimes. I mean, sure, there were some personality factors that probably played in. But then there are some other things. And again, we may actually feel like, oh yeah, I get that one. For instance, the Apostle Paul, his religious beliefs and practices changed really profoundly in his adult life. He had had a place, an important place, a like way up there kind of place in his religious culture of birth. And then things started to change on him really radically. And he was, don't get me wrong, still completely connected to his Jewish roots and identity. But it had changed. And you kind of have to think it shifted some relationships too, right? And he had lost that safe, privileged position. How about the fact that Paul was single in a culture where, kind of like ours still today, marriage was the norm? Marriage and having kids. Paul didn't do that. He was single. He actually was not fitting into the gender and sexual norms of his time just by staying single. And then he traveled around all the time, and all this stuff started happening to him, and he gets beaten and he gets imprisoned. You got to think relationships are complicated for this guy, right? And so we start off with some grief in this passage because there was someone who he thought, a couple of friends that he had thought would be there for him in the midst of it all. Despite everything, he thought they would be there for him, and they weren't. They deserted him. And it matters. And so he takes a moment to share that pain with his friend Timothy, who he's writing to. And this morning, some of you may need to take a moment to feel it, to identify it. Yeah, I have felt that pain. Whether it's family or friends, there have been people who have not been there for me when I thought they would be. And it hurt because we need relationships like we need water. But then he moves on and he starts to celebrate. We start to see his resilience, the resilience that he finds in those friendships, in those relationships that sometimes just come out of nowhere, just surprise you. Because someone did show up, and he gets to celebrate the relationship that he has with Onesiphorus. I have trouble saying it too. Because Onesiphorus showed up, refreshed him, wasn't ashamed of his chains. Anybody resonate with that word this morning? We want the friends, the chosen family who are unashamed of who we are. Searched hard for him, was intentional. It wasn't just like, oh yeah, if it's convenient. No, searched hard, worked hard to help Paul in his difficult situations. Man, this is a good friendship. And Paul needed it. Relationships are what help us be resilient in life. And so I just want to take a minute thinking about this relationship, thinking about Mama Mia, the story that Bill started us out with this morning. And think about how we approach relationships. There is this resilient approach that says relationships, family, can be found, can be created. It's about what we intentionally do. It's about who we intentionally are to each other. Versus a much more rigid and limited picture of what it means to be family. We actually see this in Jesus. There is this moment, some of you may remember this story where Jesus is doing his thing, teaching, yada, yada. And someone comes and, because he's kind of inside a house and says, hey, Jesus, your mom and your brothers, they're outside. They were actually worried about him, right? So mom and her brothers are like, what is he doing? And Jesus has this classic line because his response is, who is my mother? Who are my brothers? Pointing to his disciples, his friends, he says, here are my mother and my brothers. Whoever does the will of my Father in heaven is my brother and my sister, my mother, my sibling, my family. And I don't think Jesus is actually rejecting his family of birth. I mean, we see all the way at the cross, Mother Mary is there, and Jesus is concerned for her welfare when he dies. He's not rejecting Mary. He's just saying our picture too often is too small. We have this tendency to create out of our family, even out of our friend group sometimes, these little narrow tribes that are exclusive, that define who's in and who's out. And we just want to huddle. And Jesus is saying, no, my family is not like that. The tribe that I'm creating is not like that. My family has open arms. My family loves. My family welcomes. My family affirms. My family is known for who it includes. And Paul's picking up on that theme, not rigid family, but resilient family, chosen family. In the book of Ephesians, he writes and he says, hey, all of you, you're not strangers anymore. You're no longer in this family or that family, that tribe or this tribe. That's not how it works anymore. Now you're all members of the household of God. This family is big, it's wide, it's open, it's full of love. It's the stuff we need. I was doing some reading this week, especially looking just to find some queer voices, that we would all get to listen to this particular Sunday. I mean, we always love to lift up our queer voices, but for this Sunday in particular, and I came across this poem that it spoke to me by a man named, I have it written down, Micah Bucey. And the context for this is he's had this encounter, this queer man, with a young boy and his family, and the little boy wants to connect and bond with him by showing fingernail polish and how it matches. As the context for this poem, and I just want to invite you to listen, to think about Paul and his found family, Jesus, his chosen family, maybe you and yours. I feel that word fizzing up inside me, though it often frightens more than frees. Family. I sing praises to this family that claims me for who I am and gently shoves me into who I can become. I sing praises to the saints who don't want to be saints, to the martyrs and the heroes who ask for none of the notoriety. I sing praises to the bloodless ties that keep us afloat. Blood ties catch up. I sing praises to the clouds that cry out, families belong together, and know that it means so much more than what some want it to mean. I sing praises to this fleeting moment on the street, a moment that begins between two nail-polished people and then prisms out, extending the rainbow, creating the cloud. We are twins, and we are nothing alike. We are seeking a tribe, and we are extending the tribe. We have so much to teach, and we have so much to learn. We have eternal praises to sing, and we have eternal thanks to give. I love that.
That was beautiful. So chosen family looks different, right? Everyone, you can't like put it in a box. It's the idea of you're choosing into family. And so we wanted to have just one more example of what that looks like. And so if you would welcome Byron Bush as he comes up, he's going to share a little bit of his story with us today. But been trying to get you up here to sing, but if I, maybe this
First
will
step.
be the first
There you
step.
go.
And now,
Say, Brenna's
Here,
got
I'm
the
gonna
good
put you
light
over
right
here.
here.
yeah, right here. That's good. It looks good.
Morning.
Here, come step in the middle for our Zoom
So
people,
Zoom.
though.
Yeah.
Hello,
There,
Zoom.
you still get some light. It's okay. It's okay.
Always find your light.
Byron's is kind of a small personality.
Good morning.
You probably picked up on that. So, how long have you been around City Church? Why are you here?
It'll be 3 years this summer that we've been coming to City Church, and we love it. Love it. Love it. Love
3 years,
Yeah,
and we
3
still
years.
haven't
We
gotten
love
you up
you.
here
it.
singing.
And I have not come up here to sing yet,
Okay.
but I'm here today. Who knows?
Okay, here, all right. I'm just putting it out there, just adding a little gentle pressure, that gentle shove that she read about.
And peer pressure. Peer pressure.
There
Thank
you
you.
So so you're close with your family. You have a zillion friends,
Yes, zillion friends, good friends, dear friends.
right? Some of whom
That's
showed
how
up.
I'm here. That's why I'm at this church. Rod is my best friend.
Yeah.
And he came here. We met in church years ago, and then we left that church for just whatever. And then he was shopping for churches, and I was like, I'll let him do all the hard work.
Like a
And
good
so-
friend.
Like a good friend does. So he did all the hard work and then found this church. And so then we came after him.
Yeah, great.
So, yes, thank you, Rod.
Yeah, it works. But you got some of your chosen family here today
definitely.
supporting you, which is great. But there's a kind of an unusual situation that happened. So tell us a little bit. What do you do for your job?
I'm a school counselor at a middle school. So this is the end of my 29th year.
Wow.
Woo!
So 2 more years and I'm out.
He started when he was 11 in that job.
Smart.
But so along the way, a number of years ago, you met a kid,
Did meet a
and
kid.
tell us a little bit about.
So as a
this kid.
counselor, one of my primary jobs is to schedule everybody at the beginning of the year to make sure everybody has all the classes that they need. Before computers got as smart as they are now, a lot of times at the beginning of the year, there would be all these kids in the auditorium who didn't have schedules on the first day because their schedules were messed up. And so sometimes it looked like this on the first day of school, which would freak us out because we had to get all these kids scheduled and not overload classes and get it all done. One year particularly, the auditorium did look like this. And so as I'm fixing kids' schedules and coming in the back door and like calling out names and saying, trying to get kids out, this little kid walks up to me and he's like, "Are you the one in charge of getting these schedules done? When am I getting out of this auditorium?"
Your kind of guy.
And I'm like, I don't know who this little sassy queer kid is, but he better back up. And so that's how, when I first met Shayland, and I was just like, oh my God. But he was sweet and sassy. And then part of his, he was in foster care, as I found out later, but part of his strategies for his safety was to connect with people that he thought he could trust at whatever school he was at. And so I became that person. And then if I wasn't there, it was this woman, Elizabeth, who also worked in office. And so...
So over time, how did that relationship?
He was like my shadow. Like I would get to work and he would be sitting in my office. During lunch, he would be outside with my little lunch friends and we were always hanging out. School got out at 3:30, then he would be in my office until I left at 4:30. And there were times at those, hour-long conversations when I am trying to get some work done, and he's just chit-chatting and and sharing everything about his life. And he had been in foster care since he was in 2nd grade. And so he was just sharing all this stuff, and he's a little specific. And so he would bring in, one day he brought in like his whole little document file of all of his court stuff. And he's like sharing all this information with me and gave me a social worker's phone number. And so, it was like a really, really good conversation that went on for months and months. And I had always wanted to be a dad. And like the year before, I had gone to like the initial adoption class that you go to if you want to think about, if you're thinking about adopting. And I'm sorry, Brenna.
No, you're good. I'm listening. All ears.
And so I had gone to the class, but I hadn't really done anything. I had just gone to like the initial class that you have to go to. And, but I had friends at church who knew that I was thinking about, somewhere I wanted to be a dad because I had wonderful parents and I wanted to give that to somebody specific. I felt like I was using it every day in my counseling world because I was everybody's dad at school. But I felt like I really wanted to be a dad. And so, so that was how I always felt.
Yeah. But then that shifted, right? Because he moved schools and then he was gone.
Yeah, so he was at my school beginning of the school year, so September, and he was only there until January when he got put into a different foster home, so he got sent to a different school. Yeah. So he was out of my life.
So he was, but then he wasn't.
No, yeah, he was gone, and then he called me in 7th grade, and he was living with what he said it was his grandfather, but I found out it's like friends of his mom, so it was like fake grandparents, but he was living with them, but he tells me he's with his grandparents. I'm like, okay, good. So he's safe, he's with family. I can, check that off my box. I don't have to think about him and worry about him, like where is he, who's he with, that kind of thing. So that was, I don't know when in 7th grade, but that was when he was in 7th grade. So then fast forward, he calls me in 9th grade. And so I was, I given him my cell phone number when he was in 6th grade because, you never know. So I gave him my cell phone number on my business card, and I told him, I said, my email will never change because I'm not changing jobs, which I haven't. And my cell phone number is here, so you can always reach me, if anything happens. And so in 9th grade, he calls me on my cell phone. I'm sitting in my house and just kind of chilling on the bed. And I was like, oh my God, so good to hear from you, and how's everything? And he tells me that he's not with his grandparents anymore, that he's in a group home up in Shadow Hills, up in like way the heck up there in Burbank, above Burbank or somewhere. Anyway, so, I heard that and it was just like, my heart just kind of cracked. And I was like, oh, that's, I can't say that word, but, because it was, and he's living in this group home and he's, still his positive self and telling me it's okay and it's fine. But I felt bad, and I was, sitting there in my house, and I'm thinking about my spare bedroom, which is a closet, which I call the armory. And I was just like, but I didn't say anything, and I was just, like, all right, and we had a great conversation. So this is January or so. And so then we had regular conversations, January, February. His birthday's in March. And so I said, I would love to see you for your birthday. Can I come up to the group home and maybe bake cupcakes and bring them to the house? And he was like, no, you probably can't do that. But so where he was in this group home, there was horse ranches. And so he volunteered at a horse ranch. That was one of the things they offered to the kids. So he was volunteering at a horse ranch, and he was volunteering on his birthday. So I said, well, I'll just meet you at the horse ranch and I'll just, give you some cupcakes for his birthday. And so I drove up. It was like an hour drive. It was forever. But and he had asked for like whipped cream cupcakes with strawberries, which if cupcakes, like that whipped cream frosting is very delicate. And so when then you put fresh fruit on it, like
Byron's a cook, by the way.
Yeah.
And so stuff
very good
slides,
cook.
but here I am trying to take these cupcakes, and it was warm. It was May, but it was March, but it was warm.
You're saying there's a lot of love.
It was a lot of love. I got him some birthday gifts. And so I got him to the ranch, called him on his phone. He came out. And it's the first time I've seen him since he was 11. And so it was wonderful to see him. And so we hugged, and I gave him his stuff. And then he's like, I got to go. And so he went back. And
you just kept developing this relationship.
Yes. And then so we met at the mall and hung out for a day, which was wonderful. And I remember sitting across from him at lunch, just looking into his eyes, just like, wow, I think this could be something, but I wasn't sure because I was not ready to commit. And so when I hadn't said anything to him or anything because I didn't want to get his hopes up. And I mean, even when he was in 6th grade, I remember telling Rod and some people at church said, oh my God, I met the kid. And they were all happy for me. And then he left the school. So this is his 9th grade year. So we met at the mall. So then I said, well, let me talk to your social worker because this is probably not cool that this grown man is meeting you at the mall. Even though I'm me and I know I'm safe and I'm safe, but whatever. So I reached out to a social worker, and she was like, well, who are you, and why do you want to see this child? And so that was a little dicey for a hot second, where they thought I was, somebody else. But then we started, I had to go in and get questioned by them and go through the whole process of I just wanted to see him. I just said, I just want to spend some time with him. Like, I'll just go to the group home and just spend time. And so the social worker was like, well, that's not really, you can't just do that. You have to where are you going with this? And I was like, well, I don't know where I'm going with this. I just would like to spend some time with him, and he wants to spend time with me. So that should just be okay. So we did that. So I went up to supervised visits, and if anybody's ever had supervised visits, they are bizarre. So you're like, hanging out with your person, whatever,
With
any
your-
situation. And then there's like this other person just sitting there like on their phone or, kind of looking at you like they're waiting for you to like reach out and do something. It's really bizarre. So we graduated from that to I could pick him up and take him out. And then we graduated from that to he got to come down and see me. And but at that point I had already I remember driving one evening and thinking, I love my life. I love my life. I have wonderful friends. I had a beautiful family. And I love where I lived. I love all this stuff. But I was like, God, is this the best I can do? Is this it? I'm happy. I'm super happy. And not very often have I heard a voice in my head that I attribute to God. But like on that day, driving down Carson, like I heard, no, you can do better. And so
And you can kind of see how God said it with this little bit of an attitude.
with a little attitude.
Yeah, okay.
And so that night when I was talking to Shayland, and I said to him, I said, would you like to be a part of my family? And he said yes, so fast, I wasn't really ready for it. I thought he was gonna think about it and let me tell you tomorrow. And but he was like, yes. And so then that started the ball where I, called a social worker and said, this is where we're going. This is now I have a direction. Wow. And so
This is his 9th grade year?
so that's his 9th grade year. So this is maybe April, May, so May-ish. So then I started taking the real adoption classes. And then by August, he was living with me.
And now he is your...
So that was August, and then a year after that, in December, we had our adoption ceremony.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
And just in one or two sentences, because we're going to wrap up here.
Yeah,
but
sorry, I'm
now,
sorry.
No,
now
it's
everything's
so
perfect,
good.
right?
No, everything is not perfect. We had some really great times living together. He moved out when he was 19, which thank God was right before COVID. Whew, that would have been crazy. But his biological mother passed away a year ago, and he kind of spiraled after that for different reasons. And so he's just kind of pushed me out, and which has been hard. But he's 23 now, so he's got to find himself. I text him all the time, and he now will heart my text, which I'm like.
So there's some
So it's-
distance, there's some
There's
reconnection.
distance, but
there's-
it's moving in the right direction. I mean,
it's
it is
parenting.
people. It's
So-
parenting. I know. I mean, as a counselor, I know parents who are amazing people who have really crappy kids. And they're theirs biologically, so, But as people, we're all kind of crappy sometimes, and that's just kind of the space we're in this moment.
But I appreciate, right? You don't just put a bow on top and saying everything's perfect. It's like,
No.
it's messy,
it
but
is
this
messy.
is chosen family.
Yes.
Would you thank Byron Bush? That was so good.
Thank you for sharing that.
Good. So great. It is messy. We are all messy. That's just one story, right? It can look so different. It does look so different for all of us. And I wonder if so many of us, have we taken the time to ask that question, to be open enough just to ask God, God, I love my life, but could I be doing better? Could there be more love? Could there be more family? And what would God say to us? I want to end with a final quote, because in just a few minutes, we are going to have the opportunity to ordain and install some new leaders around here at City Church, some developers and connectors. If you're familiar with more traditional churches, there they might call them elders and deacons, but people who help lead and guide us, and in a lot of ways model what it means for us to be family as a church. But it's not just their job. And that's what I love about this quote from queer pastor Mihee Kim-Kort, as she's just reflecting on radical belonging and what she learned from the Korean American church of her youth. I think our church truly became like a family to us, not because we shared the same language or lineage, but because we were a part of each other's moments, all those struggles and celebrations throughout the whole week. How wonderful it is that we are given, the holy and sacred task of holding space for one another, for this shared belovedness. Not just clergy or the elders or deacons, not only those ordained, but all of us are called to convey the presence and promise of God's steadfast love, to be witnesses to one another's belovedness. And it can happen in what seems like ordinary and everyday acts of belonging: a phone call, a visit, a meal, a prayer. Our friend and leader, Esther Kim, is going to come up and lead us in a shared prayer, a shared liturgy.
Thanks, Esther.
All right, we're going to go ahead and read this together. I think it should be up on the screen. This is a good one, so I'm going to kind of take my time with it, read it kind of slow, okay? So, and if you'd like to join in with me, feel free. Holy One, your strange ways, they astound us. Among the mighty, your wisdom is called foolish. While others assert their power with force, yours unfolds like an invitation. You never resort to weapons. You turn from all paths of domination. Beauty and truth are your means of persuasion. Freedom is your promise. While empires shout false promises of security, using fear to turn us against each other, you whisper things of vulnerability, of meals at table and sharing what we have, of solidarity and new life. When you, the sacred, took on flesh, you sought neither thrones nor prestige, but made your friends among the outcast, sex workers, the imprisoned, the hungry and the ill, the fed up and the weary. Though you were presented with every opportunity to seek the importance among the elite, to the end you chose the edges, making your home among the vulnerable, living in solidarity with the criminalized and despised. Abandoning the promises of conformity, we hope to be strange like you, strangers to all that normalizes evil, to power that corrupts, to practices that demean or neglect. Make us faithful to the peculiar calling of Christ, unafraid to bear the names of the despised, firmly planted in the confidence of your holy mystery, the strange love that calls us to fight with and for each other, and awakens us to the joy you set before us. Amen.